my first panelist, Aisha Salaudin. Aisha is a journalist at CNN International. She has done quite a lot of amazing work around women and girls and covering stories in Africa. And she introduced me as Aisha Salaudin. Actually, she was talking about Aisha Salaudin, not me. I'm Amina Salaudin. So just clearing that up. And she also has a podcast called I Like Girls. I Like Girls focuses on issues surrounding African women, unique to African women, and just talk about, just have conversations about women and what it is they are facing in their lives, and how to go about living in a society that is very discriminatory to women. So, Aisha, please. Thank you very much. With a round of applause for Aisha. Hmm. My second panelist is Nana Wanchuku. So Nana is a policy manager at Silverchip Fox Consulting. She's a lawyer, she's a researcher, she's a rights advocate, and an affiliate at the Harvard Berkeley Klan Center, Cambridge. Nana sits on the board of TECA NG, that is Tech Women Project Initiative Limited, and Event Nigeria's board. So please, a round of applause for Nana. My third panelist today is Winga Sesson. He is the executive director. Two conversation, an enlightening one, of course, around gender violence perpetrated via digital spaces. Yeah, so Aisha, I'm going to start with you first. So yeah, you are very vocal on social media, for example, Twitter to be precise, and there are some times that you would tweet or say something online that people would find unconventional or controversial, given the fact that you're a woman and also maybe because you're a Muslim. So there are times when you would put out your opinions there and then you would receive backlash. What is that experience like? What has that been?
Um, I guess you're asking for how it feels to be dragged on social media for having opinions. It doesn't feel great, but I think over the years I've sort of built a tough skin. Because first of all, it's social media. I know you can't come to my house and beat me, so it's just it's just social media does something to you because you know that you're far from the person. It just gives you more kind of audacity to say things that if you see the person in real life you would never be able to say. So with that, I'm not saying that there haven't been cases of violence that have like resulted from social media, but I mean when you compare the numbers, most people just are comfortable behind the keyboard. So with that knowledge and information, I really just don't care. So, and like I said, over the years, I've built a thick skin. Like, if you're dragging me every other day, like at some point, I'm used to it. And I know that you are not my audience for that kind of information because there's some people that you have to admit that you're far gone. Like, I'm not going to try to talk to you or try to convince you that women's rights is important. If at your age and whatever you don't believe it, then there's no going back. So I guess just to summarize everything I've said, it doesn't feel good, but I'm used to it. And passing out information about women's rights is more important than people's reactions, childish reactions. So yeah.
Thank you very much, Aisha. Thank you for that. Hi, Nana.
Hi.
Okay,
I know.
I'm just going to ask, something around, law policy.
Don't put me in a box.
No, 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 no. I would not do that. But I would just like to know what you think, like how watertight are the policies or laws that we have around protection of women online generally, and especially, are there specific reporting channels that exist when it comes to gender-based violence, particularly against women online?
Okay, so this is how I'm going to speak about the policy issues. There's the platform, right? Internal policies of the platform on which the violence is being perpetrated. And then there's also the laws around the countries that the platforms operate in. and then there are the laws of Nigeria. Um, the major platforms that we find some of these acts of violence, there's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Um, and I try not to limit online violence to just social media platforms. There are other digital platforms. There are games. Do you understand? There are different emails, for instance, right? I remember a story that someone told at a forum like this, where someone had written her, she had posted a picture, right? And then someone wrote her on LinkedIn and obtained her email address, then wrote her a long email telling her there should be a protocol. I've seen someone who wrote to me, I think I wrote this on a blog, who wrote to me and said that her boyfriend, who she said she was dumping, decided that he was going to leak her nudes and he was going to post it. I directed her to a police person, and the person directed her to another person, the location where she was. And what the person said to her is, bring the photo he wants to post, let me see. So you see, and when I got on the phone to speak to this person, and he was genuinely defending himself. So I was so confused. I was wondering, is this from a point of I don't know what to do, or I am a pervert who wants to, use my position to do things that are untoward? So there is no protocol. If you speak, I remember a couple of years ago, I think this was in 2014 or 2015, Open Society Initiative organized some event. I'm still trying to remember, but it was around violence against women. And there was this lady, this police woman, who was in charge of the gender desk, who sat down and argued that if you acted in an immoral manner, do you understand? She had no honors to protect you. That's a policewoman who was rich. She was arguing, she was fighting for her right to disrespect someone who has been violated because of maybe her moral. So Nigeria may not in the next couple of years enact any laws that border on the sidelines of morality, right? But one of the things that's important to note is these laws currently don't exist. Women don't have any special protection online. I feel like the biggest or closest win we can get is to engage with the platform. The platforms have internal policies that can generally work around helping women protect themselves or learning how to protect themselves. Sorry, I don't want to hog the microphone too much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nana. Talking about the responsibility that tech companies do have, Winga, what would you like to say about that? What is the role they are supposed to play here? I'm sure Nana has something to say, and Aisha, so we're just going to take it like that.
All right. So good news is that half the world now posts content owned by 2 billionaires. Mark and Elon, right? And that is important. That is important because there are many sides to this conversation. I know we're talking about platforms, but the reason why we're shifting responsibility to platforms is because society or the countries where this incidents happen are failed to protect citizens. I'm not surprised about the policewoman who is saying that. Some of the worst defenders of the patriarchy are women. And I want to say of a certain generation. And I think that we need to be very careful. We need to be very careful. And the reason we need to be very careful is because when we entrust a desire for justice to somebody who does not care about the circumstances or the outcome, we make the process worse. When we do training for judges, for example, one of the things we try to do is to create an opportunity for them to see the issues. I had the privilege of training judges just after NSAS. No, on the day of the anniversary, October 20, 2021. And I put up a picture of NSAS and I just looked at the room for a few minutes. And there were people who were not comfortable. By the way, I did the same thing with policemen. policewomen and DSS security agencies, and those ones, of course, were clearly like, why is this guy doing this? But thankfully, pain was painful. So if we're paying for the venue, then you have to sit down and listen. But I did that to create an opportunity for us to have a conversation, because the truth is, many of these custodians of justice have not even thought beyond their cultural, religious, and in quotes, elderly. Because there are certain things, the woman who was speaking, for example, I'm sure was speaking as an elder who is a custodian of morality, of national morality. Like, oh my God, you have dreadlocks and you are complaining a policeman arrested you and you're a man. Because as far as they are concerned, these children of nowadays, we are sports. That's their stand. And that's where the danger exists. And that's why, unfortunately, we seem to be focusing on platforms. And I will come to platforms in a second. But I think we need to be careful with focusing on platforms. Because now that Elon has bought Twitter, we don't know what he's going to do with Twitter. Twitter may become better. Twitter may become worse. He may still sell it when he realizes that Twitter can't make money or whatever. But what this tells us is that for many years in the human rights community, we've been talking about the fact that there are cloud nations and nation states. And many people know that the nation state has failed them, so are beginning to look to cloud nations for solutions, which they can't find. There's no way. I'll tell you what happened with the Chrisland Schools video. Once that incident happened, I reached out to contacts at Twitter. I couldn't watch the video because I know, for example, if I watch it, I'll be the first they will send to jail with the cybercrime law in Nigeria. Because, when courts suing the government for that same cybercrime law, so if I do something about that cybercrime law, I suspect that they will just quickly say, yeah, throw him into jail. But I couldn't watch it, and I didn't have to be honest. You didn't have to watch the video to know that this was wrong. And then I flagged with Twitter and said, listen, there is this video, I've seen a timeline, and the way my timeline is set is that I don't see video or pictures that are flagged or that are considered mature or considered adult until I choose to click on view. And that's deliberate because there's so much violence. You don't want to wake up in the morning and the first picture you're going to see is of someone who their head has been cut off or something like that. I don't want to see that, right? So I shared a screenshot of there's a placeholder there with Twitter and said, listen, I can't view this for obvious reasons. National laws and also personal. I don't want to start you can't unsee, right? And I flagged that because I know that no matter how much you report, you are reporting on one account. This is not a one account problem. There were people who were boasting about seeing it and willing to share it. Even when they were told that this is illegal according to Nigerian laws, many of them, and don't forget, this is also social boasting. FOMO, fear of missing out. I've also seen it, regardless of thinking through it. So this is a challenge with the platforms. But having said that, two things. Number one, we must continue to push governments to protect citizens. What you do with the vulnerable in society is a clear reflection of the kind of community that you are. We know, to be honest, that Nigeria does not protect it. But we must continue to push to make sure that happens. All of the states that are providing good practices, Ekiti State. I'm sure you've seen some of the information coming from Ekiti State, not because my friend is there, but because Lagos also. You see that there are people who have been punished, who have been put on sex offenders registers, and whose pictures have been put up, and who obviously cannot get jobs in decent companies because of that crime they've committed. When we see those good practices, let's promote those good practices. And I think it's important to do that because no matter how much you condemn the states that haven't done it, if you don't show them how to do it, it's not going to happen. The second thing is that for the platforms, yes, the platforms need to do better, but it has to come from us. When, for example, a platform says we can't tell you who the trusted partners are, we have to push back. We're a trusted partner, and I don't believe that it should be secret. If we're trusted as Paradigm Initiative with being able to report content on Facebook or on Twitter or whatever platform, then we should know that comes with a responsibility. If somebody who has been affected is suffering from that, then if I want to elevate myself to be called a trusted partner, I should know there are consequences for that. So I vehemently oppose that idea of keeping this secret, and they know that. And I think that we need to push back more and demand better of platforms. 4.3 billion people, 4.3 billion people are active across the Facebook universe. That's more than half the number of people in the world. And that means that certain responsibilities come with that. Of course, I trust that we've got representatives of those social media platforms who will say a bit about what they need to do. But the reality is that at the three levels, Nana broke it down. There's the platform, there's the country, and then there are certain standards within the community that apply within the platform. But a very good example that we also have is the conversation around the DSA, the Digital Services Act, that I'm sure many of us have been following with Europe, which is focused on protecting citizens and respecting their rights. We need to have these same conversations here. Unfortunately, the way the conversation is going is the wrong direction. Yesterday, I had a chance of speaking about how Nigeria handles these issues. Nigeria says, Lai Mohammed, to be specific, says, yeah, I'm mentioning names, and I know people will get offended, and that's fine. This is why I speak the way I speak, so you can understand the issues, and we can stop hiding under umbrellas that are transparent. Lai Mohammed says, oh, Twitter, they are using it for iPop. Let's shut it down, right? Now, that is our approach to issues, and it doesn't work, because what you do with that is people then go on the ground, if indeed they were using the platform, but go the other way of going through the thorough process, which is what has been done with the DSA. To go through parliament. When you go through parliament, it makes progress. People are able to make contributions. And guess what? Final thing I would say is need to have this tough. I know as a community, as Nigeria, when we hear the word sex, the room changes. When we hear certain words, our reaction is, no, don't talk about it. When we hear names mentioned or when we are called out, but if we don't have these conversations, DRIF22, we will come back here and Aisha will say the same thing, Nana will say the same thing, and I won't show up.
Wow, that was intense. All right. I would like to ask you, Binga, another question, a follow-up question to that. We know that Paradigm Initiative, spearheaded by you and other stakeholders, you've been pushing for the legislation that we know about, the Digital Rights and Freedoms Bill. So I would like to ask, because you dabbled into policy a bit, you dabbled into law a bit, and you talked about Lai Mohammed, which is in government. So what is the state of play of that? What is the reaction of the government to that particular policy? Because the closest we've had to anything that's closest would I say people-centric bill that actually focuses on digital rights and helps people to actually participate online properly and protect citizens is that particular bill that we're trying to pass. So what is the state of play and the reaction of government towards that particular bill, and has that been?
Okay, so in 2019, Mr. Muhammadu Buhari's reaction was not to sign the bill, but that was also very helpful. Because and the good thing is that the president, when he decides to put assent, usually, which is great, he doesn't have to, sends a letter back to the National Assembly and says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 reasons why I didn't sign the bill. We should be grateful when that is done, because to be honest, it doesn't have to be done. The legal thing is without assent, you don't have to explain. So we're glad, when people fix roads, even though it's their job, they put a billboard with their face and you say, Mr. Governor, thank you. Unfortunately, that's the price of being Nigerian. So the president didn't sign the bill, but he stated the reasons. One of the reasons was because the bill was considered too technical. It's a funny reason, but sorry. Another reason is because the bill mixed two issues in one: digital rights and data protection. And the president's people felt it should be separated, primarily also because Nigeria, as you know, is involved in very, very another topic entirely, conversation on data protection. So there's a new legislation around that. Because usually you can't withhold assent from signing a bill because another bill is being discussed. You withhold assent if there's a law, a bill that has been passed. But that's okay. So what that made us do was to go back to the drawing board. The first thing we did was to call into the same room all of the people who said Mr. President should not sign the bill. Of course, we knew who they were. And said, okay, why wasn't this signed? And they explained based on what the president said. Between then and now, 3 key things have happened. Number one is that the bill has been updated Now that there's a data protection bill, data protection component has been removed from the bill, which is fine. So there are two things being done, separately, which is great. But what we've ensured in updating the bill is that the essence of rights represented by the bill is not removed. That's one thing that has happened. Second thing that has happened, which happened in the last 2 weeks, that all stakeholders, including government, because your question was what's the reaction of government to this, including government institutions, have now come back to the table to say, well, this is now the new draft. What do you think? And the great news is that people who were originally opposed to issues have now understood digital a bit more, thanks to COVID. COVID is a bad thing, but it helped many of us understand digital more. Schooling had to happen online. Education online. Talking to your parents online. Talking to your partners. For those who were in different locations when the lockdown happened, some of us were in Accra just before the announcement. Thankfully made it home in time, but you had to go online. Some of us did not do a lot of Zoom before. I saw a graduation picture just yesterday. Somebody was in a pair of slippers and bathroom and pajama trousers. I don't know if anybody has seen it. People are so used to Zoom calls where you wear nothing sensible, below your waist, that this guy came for his graduation with pajamas, trousers, and slippers, and then put on the graduation gown. I'm sure somebody in this room has seen that picture. Who has seen that picture? Yes, that is what Zoom does to you. Because in Zoom, I just finished one Zoom call before this. What is your bust up that everyone sees? So you don't care about what's down. And those are the new realities for us. So we're glad that people have learned lessons from digital. But I think the thought, and this is very instructive, thing that has happened is the bill had to go back to Parliament. And in shopping for someone to sponsor it again, we realized that the bill gone through first reading. Guess what? The chief whip, which is great, senior officer, saw the bill that was almost passed, saw that it was on digital, and had an interesting conversation with his own family. And this is really why it's important for us to continue to advocate, because you don't know what conversations parliamentarians, judges, and executive members are having in their homes or with their friends. And you don't know when what you say about acting on gender-based violence is going to coincide with the conversation they just had with their aunt or their uncle. Because this gentleman had just had this conversation with his kids who were studying computer science and then realized, oh, this is very close to what my kids are studying. This is a good bill for Nigeria. And then he took the bill and then we went to see him. And guess what? Our agitation, our questions, who will sponsor the bill, was met with a senior official in Parliament finding a bill that spoke to what he thought represented his intent for Nigeria at the time. This is why we must continue, because those two circles would coincide at any time. Your agitation and, who knows, enlightened self-interest of the people who are in.
Or personal interest, as the case may be. Yes. So thank you very much for that. Aisha, what will accountability and justice look like for victims of technology facilitated gender-based violence? Nana, you'll also be answering this question, but I would like to hear from Aisha first. So what would that look like? What should that be in your opinion, obviously?
So accountability for people that have experienced violence on digital platforms, right? I think
justice.
Justice. So I don't want to repeat what Nana and Benga, right, have said. So I'm just going to come at it from the angle of the law taking course. Like, I know that we don't have a lot of laws specific to women who have experienced gender-based violence digitally, but there's some current laws that can be put in place. Like, for example, I know there are laws against child. Oh, somebody went to jail. Oh, somebody's on the sex offenders register. Somebody can't get a job. I will chill. So personally, and this might be controversial, I don't feel that you have to be convinced about why you're not doing it. So, for example, there's some people that are not committing crimes not because they want, what's the English? English is evading me, but essentially people are running away from certain crimes, not because they feel like they shouldn't be doing it, but because they know that the law will come for them. And personally, I don't care. If you like, believe it. If you like, don't believe it. As long as you are not harming women and you're not being violent, that is your personal problem. So I believe that what justice will look like is the law taking its course, serving as a deterrent to people who have ideas, who want to share. So next time you want to share that video of 10-year-old kids, in that compromising position. Compromising is the wrong word, but in that position, you think twice that this is a crime. I can go to jail. Let me respect myself. So that's something that I believe. I think that's one way, just so I don't repeat what everybody else has said.
All right, Aisha, thank you. Nana?
Okay, so just at the intersection of what Binga and Aisha have said is private sector. The private sector employs more people than government, right? Currently. What I would say is company policies. What are your gender policies internally? Because if I hire you and I find you committing any of those type of crimes, if I see you share that picture, I'm going to sack you and I'm going to paste why I sacked you. You understand? So it's about what your company internal policies are. I think companies should stand up, to the task. They need to start living up to the task of defining their values. What are the company values? Are you an employer of labor whose employee is the type of person who delights in pedophilia? It's important to define those things. Are you an employer of labor whose employee delights in sending email to women, cursing them out, harassing them, or sexually? So it's a community on its own. If somebody wants to be employed, right? If somebody wants to be employed, the references are for a purpose. Don't just ask about their work habits. What are their habits outside? Do you understand? How did they treat the other team members in the company? It's important to know. Look at their social media history. See, before I will tell you it's private, but one thing that's constant is change. I've changed my mind. I will look at your social media history. Why? The government looks at your social media history. If there's something they need to know, why shouldn't I know? I am against discriminating against people because of beliefs they hold dear. But if your beliefs are repugnant to natural justice, do you understand? I am against that belief. If your belief is, I'm going to discriminate against this set of protected people, I'm going to do this, I'm going to abuse this person, I'm going to post revenge porn against this person, I'm going to do this. That's not someone I want working for me. That's not someone I want on my team. That's not someone I want hanging around me. If your belief is dressing up nicely, putting up your nice pictures, you can even be nude in your pictures, but you posted them yourselves. I like you. It's okay. Come and work for me. Do you understand? But if it's about doing things that will be harmful to another person, consciously doing it, either because you're angry, either because you want to get back at them, either because you feel you're bigger, or you want to, you want them to be little. You understand? Then I don't want you around me, and I'll make sure you're a pariah. So it's important that we also, that's what justice is like to me. Making people who find it easy to be abhorrent to women a pariah to society. Making people who find it easy to be abhorrent to minority people, making them a pariah. One big part of justice to me. Another part of justice to me is this. It's important for our police to work. It's important for our police to work. Why I say it's important for our police to work is this. If the police has a unified data system, this form of justice becomes easier. If you want to travel out of the country for anything, work, whatever, they want a police report. They want to see if you've been arrested for things like this. If you're filling out your US forms, they ask you, have you trafficked a person before? Everybody will say no. But it is important that eventually, if there's a database that they can run these things through to see this person was once arrested for beating a woman or for threatening to rape a woman online, then they can ask you, bring where the court absolved you of this matter. So that when you find out that if you've been charged for a thing, even if the matter was not concluded to a logical end, you will be the one agitating that the police goes through the legal court process, because you need that absolving document to say, I did not commit this crime eventually. But if we live like this, there's no effective policing,
there is no, there's no working legal system, then this doesn't feel like justice. That is why I would revert to my initial point of making people who are abhorrent human beings barriers to society.
Thank you, Nana. Gringa, please let me hear from you.
So I'll say something that I've been thinking a lot about the last days. Just happens to coincide with Elon Musk and the likely impact of that on social media. Social media is a great thing. I'm active on social media. I defended social media as the online and last-standing civic space. But when you bring two things, and I'm speaking to the Nigerian context now, even though it applies beyond Nigeria, two things. When you bring the power of social media to allow people speak their minds. Now, don't forget, we always wanted that superpower. Remember, when you were much younger, you wanted to read people's minds and know what they were thinking. You've got it now. It's Facebook. What's on your mind? And people write stories. Basket Mouth made a joke of it many years ago when he woke up in the morning, said, I'm awake now, I'm brushing my teeth. A few minutes later, I'm on the toilet seat. And people didn't get what he was saying, but he was trying to explain what social media is now. And, you can have all the conversation around it. But don't forget, that tool is powerful. People use it. But when it goes into the hands of a community where people suspend reason, which, by the way, is the reason why when people say, will Donald Trump come back to Twitter? I say, I don't know. But that Trump suspension represents something. And what it represents is this. Now, look at the context of education in Nigeria. And this applies across many African countries. The development stage for every child is best between 0 and 5. Forgive me. I'm a father of a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old. So these things are very active in my mind. Now, that's the age where when the sense of right or wrong, the sense of consciousness is not formed, anything after that, you take what you get. Now, what do we do with 0 to 5-year-olds? 0 to 5-year-olds in Nigeria, in communities where people can afford it, are handed over to nannies. For those who send them to schools, they send them to schools, many schools, including those who don't understand the principle of duty of care. In fact, when you look at the UNICEF data, the recent UNICEF data, forget that 13 million children out of school. Look at what is happening to 5-year-olds and below, malnourishment, and all of these things. And what that means is that many of the people on social media are people who cannot determine what is right or wrong. They can't tell that saying to a woman that I will book a hotel room and I will rape you is a threat to rape. It is not a joke. It is not something you can explain away. It means that we have those two things coming together, and it's a major, major challenge. Now, what do we then do? What we must do is, and I think this is really important, and I'm speaking particularly to the gentlemen in the room, and this is deliberate. I'm glad that you haven't thrown tough questions at me as the only man on this panel. But when a woman is being attacked, usually what I see is that some of us excuse that and defend the person. And the problem with that is the day it happens to you or to someone you know, then what that person will experience is based on the fact that you did not assert what should be acceptable community standards. And when I say acceptable community standard, I'm not speaking of national standards. I'm not speaking of platform standards. I'm speaking of what you want to experience as a community. Now, what hurts me the most is that, I studied engineering, and this was not our idea of the internet. So I got into school in the year that the internet was really taking shape. I've aged myself, I know, around 1995, right? And the original design was for protocols, not for platforms the way we have it now, where there's a walled garden. Facebook has its own universe. Twitter has its own universe. That was not the plan. The plan was an open platform where people can communicate across and where communities can exclude people who are not, like you've said, who are not fit for that society, either because they miss the 0 to 5 stage or because they just want to be stupid. Because there are people who just want to get followers and do stupid things to get followers. So it means that we must be able, while the work is going on, I don't know if there's going to be a setback to Twitter now. Twitter was already doing Project Blue in terms of becoming more open and things like that. While that conversation is ongoing, we need to realize that we're the custodians of the kind of experience we want to get online. Otherwise, this platform, not just online, all digital platforms will then become an excuse. The actions there will then become an excuse for governments who already have an agenda to shut down the entire civic space. Look at what happened in Uganda. Why was the internet shut down during elections? Because M7, Mr. I want another rap. Museveni said, these children use it to gist and just say things that will waste their time. That responsibility is on us as users. And I think that it is not just because we want to use this platform, but because whatever experience we allow to persist. And that's when conversations like, say, Chrislands, for example, happen. And this is why I say we need to have these difficult conversations. Please, if you have a chance to contribute to the conversation, do not stay away because you say that, this is a taboo topic. But we need to seek to understand, why is it okay for certain things to happen and impunity is the order of the day? And it's not just on the topic we're discussing today, on data abuse. And I'm sure everyone in this room is aware of this. You've got BVN, you've got NIN, you've got all of this data. And some of this data have been lost. Some of them have been sold on the black market. I was just demonstrating to a meeting that we had, I think, 2 weeks ago on Gigi.ng. And this is not on Gigi. Maybe it's on Gigi, but it's not. I don't think it's on Gigi. On Gigi.ng, I found information. This is not the dark web, right? The dark web is even very different. This one is open web, where people were selling data. You're in Lagos now. Before you leave, for those who don't live in Lagos, okay, no, don't go to Otigba. But there used to be a time when you could buy a CD of 5 million prominent Nigerians, phone numbers, names, and other details. And we thought it was a lie. We bought a copy then. We tested some of the numbers. And when we heard the voices, we reported till tomorrow. Tomorrow, nothing has been done in terms of that data abuse. So impunity is a challenge that we have. As long as there is no, and I like the way Aisha put it, people queue in many places, not because they want to queue. People respect traffic light. I can never forget, first time in my life as a 24-year-old, 24, 25, in Geneva, 3 a.m. Was it 2 or 3 a.m.? The car we were in, we're preparing for the next day when we had a youth caucus of the SIS and things like that. The car stopped at a traffic light. Let's even say 2 a.m. Nobody. Road, straight, free. Left, free. You dey craze? That was my reaction. Until I realized that, and I asked, Teacher Akinson and others were there. I said, okay, so why? And they explained to us that if the guy goes, you see that thing at the top? That's a camera. He will meet his ticket in his house. So it is not because the guy wants to obey, but he knows there are consequences. What we don't have in Nigeria is consequences. People who have done the worst of things are contesting for office for 2023. Some of them will win, and some of them will be the ones to decide whether the laws that we require should pass. And I'm not speaking about this to say it's only politicians that are the stupid people. Our community produces all of these people, but guess what? As long as there are no consequences, we will keep having this.
Thank you very much. I'm actually very excited that I put together this set of people to talk about this because it has been enlightening and it has been amazing for me. And just so we quickly round up this session, are there any last words? What is one thing you want us to take away from yesterday? If we have not listened to everything you have,
I think we can make all the laws in the world come here to talk about why it's important to for platforms to pay attention to violence against women. But I think what I want people to think about as they go on in their daily lives is I want them to normalize having difficult conversations that revolve around violence against women, not because it's exciting to talk about things like that, but because you find out that the more you talk about it, the more you pick up wrong or right. Some people, like Benga said, genuinely don't know or have been conditioned to believe that their thought process on women is the right thing to do. I've been working with women my entire life, and you meet even women who are like, but this is normal now, this is right. And the reason why those thought processes still exist is because we are not talking about it. It's like what he said, that when people hear sex or rape, they're like, no, I don't want to talk about it. But you have to. If you don't talk about it, how will you be able to talk to that 0 to 5-year-old about, okay, so nobody's supposed to touch you this way, or you're not supposed to talk to strange men, or things like that? So because we've been silenced, like there's some conversations, even now, as old as I am, that I try to have with my mom, and she's like, no, please, I don't want to talk about it. No, Fimisile, leave me. So if we have a generation that continues to uphold these things, we're never going to understand why violence against women is wrong. We're never going to understand why child pornography is a problem. We're never going to get it. I'm not trying to say that there are people, obviously there are people that get it, but just perhaps don't care. Maybe there are no consequences or whatever. But there are genuinely people that have been conditioned to believe that women shouldn't have rights. That it's okay for me to share a video of 10-year-olds engaging in sexual activity. That it's okay for me to hit a woman. There's so many surveys, so many conversations that you ask people and they're like, oh, I thought it was normal now. People do it all the time. So more conversations about this. More conversations, normalizing women's rights, normalizing sex. I think that's what I want everyone to live with. Please don't be ashamed when you hear someone talking about sex or women's rights. Talk about it. Open up. I think that's it for me.
Thank you, Aisha.
Thank you very much. I'm going to echo what Wenga said. One of the things me and my daughter always do is every time I say actions have what, she say consequences. I'm like, good. It's important. On Twitter, a couple of years ago, a governor's son threatened to rape somebody's mother. Today, that governor's son wants to run for House of Assembly or National Assembly, right? Yeah. And yet people are rationalizing his capacities, his excellence in studies. One of the things I know is that human beings are a totality of themselves. One flaw in character remains what it is, a flaw, right? It's important that we start knowing as a community, as a people, that actions have consequences. When you threaten, I will rape your mother, that's not you being angry, right? That's not you expressing yourself. That's not you being open. That's not you being worthy. It is what it is, a sexual offense. What I want is that I want the law, I want companies, I want organizations to normalize putting online sexual violence as a sexual offense. It should go into the sexual offenders register. It shouldn't go into he was badly behaved, she was badly behaved. That's not it. I want to make sure that we call things by the rightful name. A threat to rape is a sexual offense. I want us to normalize calling things by their rightful names, calling crimes by what they are, and not trying to make it appear lighter than it is. I want us to understand clearly, like Benga said, that actions do have consequences. And more often than not, it is left for the society to implement what those consequences are. Thank you.
Thank you, Nana.
Support organizations doing the difficult work. I'm glad that Tech has put this together, so gender-based violence and how it applies online. There are many organizations across Nigeria that are doing the difficult work. And at times, because we don't understand the work that they do, and I know how it feels like for people not to understand what you do. I was saying to someone, I'm still trying to explain to my mother and my son what I do exactly. I took my son to my office and he said, but I thought you were an engineer because all of the conversations you've been having have been about this person, that person, and at some point he read a book about Mandela and thought I was in human rights and all that. We may not understand what they're doing, but I know that the work we do at Paradigm Initiative has benefited largely and a lot from people who, even when they don't understand in full, they know that when it comes to digital rights and digital inclusion, this is what you guys do. So when there are cases or when there are opportunities, they say, oh, talk to PIN. Please support institutions that are doing the hard work. When people are tweeting and I say this happened, that happened, please share with those organizations. They understand the context, they know what what to do, and they will make sure that when next someone needs help, they're able to reach. So please, my final word, find those organizations. Some of them you don't have to find them, you know them already. Support the work they do in any way you can. When they invite you to come and speak on a panel, say yes. Or when they need you to please help share some information in terms of what needs to be done, please share the information. And because the truth is, while we're still hoping that justice will be done, the other side of it is we need to make sure that the good and the best practices become more popular. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'm just going to add my beats to this. At TECA, we have what we call the Coffee and Tech Convention. And then our last episode of that event, it was also on technology facilitated gender-based violence. And we had this person that was very much opposed to everything we were saying because he has been socialized that way. It was a full-blown argument. And at the end of the day, I was glad because he said something. He said, it's because we have spaces like this, that's why we can educate ourselves on things like this. So it was glad that he came because his orientation started changing from the conversation, from that gathering, from we knocking down every single thing he was saying about technology facilitated gender-based violence. Again, that goes to say that conversations like this are so important. Reiterating what Aisha said, we need to have the difficult conversations. We need to be able to, put these thoughts out there and, okay, what is the problem? How is the way forward? There's something Chioma Maidi says a lot. She says personal responsibility. In everything that we do, we need to be responsible for the kind of life that we live, both, online and offline. And that goes to speak to the content we post, our reactions to people, and what we do. We need to take responsibility for our actions because they have consequences. And our laws should also reflect that. So thank you very much for this session. My name is Amina Salaudin, Project Officer at TECA. And thank you so much, Nana Gwenga and Aisha, for joining us today. So that will be the end of my session. Thank you, everyone.